Good morning. This is Delegate Crotty. Just gonna do a quick check on who's on the line. Staff, are you able to hear me?
Shirley, yes, we are able to hear you.
Okay, perfect. I'm right here in front of the office of the prosecutor. I'm gonna make my way in. I appreciate the office of the prosecutor accommodating the task force today as we move forward with our agenda. Um, Shadeja, since we have a presentation, do we have confirmation that Renee is on the line?
Yes, I am present.
Biga, well, thank you.
Oh,
Okay. All right. So let's start the meeting. Tati and staff, if you want to read the agenda into the record, um, and we take roll call, just help me out with how you want to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, so we are on our own today for, there's not a lot of staff at Office of Legislative Services, so I'm gonna do my best to take that part of the role. So good morning, everyone. My name is Tatiana Billy. I am with the Office of the Speaker. I'm one of the Senior Public Information Officers, and I do serve as the co-chair for the Missing Virgin Day Relatives Task Force. The time is 8:35 a.m. and we're gonna start this meeting. We're gonna go through roll call. If I call your name, please let us know if you're here. Chair Amber Cardi.
I'm here, Shadeja.
Okay, thank you. Council Delegate Helena Nesbier. Council Delegate Helena Nesbier. Council Delegate Helena Nesbier is not online. Do we have our Council Delegate Eugenia Charles Newton? Council Delegate Eugenia Charles Newton. Council Delegate Eugenia Charles Newton is not on the line. I myself am here, Tatiana Billy, Office of the Speaker. Do we have Yolanda Azua from OPVP? Yolanda Azua? Yolanda Azua did not answer roll call. Miss Anna Scott? Miss Anna Scott? Miss Anna Scott did not answer roll call. Miss Racita Billy? Miss Racita Billy? Miss Racita Billy did not answer roll call. Miss Denise Billy?
I'm representing Office of the Prosecutor.
All right, we do have a member of the Office of the Prosecutor here in the office. Angelina Stanford. Angelina Stanford, are you on the line? Miss Angelina Stanford did not answer roll call. Director Michael Henderson. Director Henderson. Director Michael Henderson did not answer roll call. Miss Laurel Shepherd.
Good morning, I'm present.
Miss Laurel Shepherd is on the line. Miss Tonya Grass.
Present.
Miss Tonya Grass is on the line. Mr. John Sosi. Mr. John Sosi. Mr. John Sosi did not answer roll call. Miss Meski Yatse. Miss Meski Yatse. Meski did not answer roll call. Mr. Milton Bluehouse Jr. Mr. Milton Bluehouse Jr. Mr. Bluehouse Jr. did not answer roll call. Miss Janet Deschini. Miss Janet Deschini. Miss Deschini did not answer roll call. Miss Salanta Jim. Miss Salanta Jim. Miss Salanta Jim did not answer roll call. Miss Bijibala Bigay.
Oh, someone
Oh,
else there.
Salanta, are you on the line?
And then-
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
And Chair Charles Names.
Delegate Charles Newman, okay. Delegate Charles Newman, are you on the line? We do see you on the line, so I will check mark you that you are here. Ms.
I'm sorry, I
Bijibod,
didn't know I was muted. I am on the line. This is Delegate Charles Newton.
thank you for answering roll call. Ms. Bijibod Begay? Ms. Bijibod Begay did not answer roll call. Chair Amber Cardi, we do have, members on the line. And we're gonna go through with the agenda. We're gonna be starting off with the, roll call and invocation. Then we go into recognizing guests and visiting officials. We're going to, review and adopt the agenda. We have one report for today from Renee, Swops on the law enforcement and public relations training. 5, old business none, new business none, and closing of the meeting and adjournment.
Okay, appreciate it, show up. So we did roll call. Salata, shut it. Are you in a place to provide invocation today?
Not right now, Delegate Crotty. I'm en route to a meeting.
Okay. Oh, and I do see Yolanda Azua's on the line. Yolanda, we will write you here for the record. Okay, appreciate it. Do we have any volunteers for invocation?
I can do invocation.
Hagoshi, you have the floor.
Good morning, Heavenly Father. We come to you glorifying the day, the moisture you have bestowed upon us today. Heavenly Father, as we gather today in this meeting, be with Miss Renee as she presents. Give her strength, wisdom, and knowledge that her report is well accepted. Heavenly Father, as we walk with you today, may we give you all the praise and glory, and thank you for each and every one of us present at this meeting and those online. Thank you, Heavenly Father, in your most precious name. Amen.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Appreciate that prayer, Shada. And it's good to hear you on the line joining us. We'll move forward on recognizing guests and visiting officials. On my board, we have Renee Swope. We have Laura, let's see, Motorola 5G. Did you want to unmute yourself to recognize for the record, to be recognized for the record? Okay, maybe we'll come back. I do see Twyla Largo with Navajo Technical University. Chelsea Sewa Shada with Southwest Indigenous Women's Coalition, Claire Hood, Crystal Yazi, Zunaba Jim with Missing and Murdered in Their Relatives Coalition, Deidre Rogers with Chair Brenda Jesus, Legislative District Assistant, and we have Rachel Hood with the Arizona Attorney General's Office. And we do have a call-in number ending in 839. Did you want to unmute and recognize yourself for the record? Okay, you could also use the chat function if you're on Zoom, and I do see Dr. Gonzalez has joined us, who is helping with the NTU database team. So thank you for joining us. We'll move forward with other officials as they join. Appreciate your presence here. So today we're going to be giving a report by Rena, and there's no old business. There's no new business to consider, and then we'll do close of meeting. So to amend this agenda, task force members, I also wanted to add a report on an update with the Navajo Nation Tribal Community Response Plan. And that could be new 4D. And we'll go over where we're at in the response plan as we want to acknowledge and provide a move forward with the recommendation that Navajo Nation update this tribal community response plan at least every year. Is there any other items that we need to add onto the agenda? Okay, the last item that I wanted to add, C, I'll give you a budget update with the Navajo Nation update on all of MMBR's recommendations, where we're at, what was funded, how it's going to move forward, and how as a task force we can monitor to make sure that funding is used for the purpose it was allocated.
Sorry, for Motorola, 5G, it's gonna be the father of Dominic Molyneux.
Okay. Okay, Shash, thank you for joining us. I know we've met at the Shiprock Parade, and so I appreciate that you were able to join the line. I wanted to first acknowledge, Shash, if you wanted to address or speak to the task force today, or if you just wanted to listen, we'll move at the speed that you're comfortable with.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to all, and thanks for being there for each one of us. I believe this is my first time in this kind of a organization that's being I'll delegate there in One Rock. This is like I said, my first time here, and I just want to say I just want to listen in first and probably start off from there. And other than that, I'll probably just listen in. And thanks again. And with Crystal's going to be there, will be on the line with us. So I give her the permission to be there for us.
Okay, appreciate it. What we'll do is we'll add once Crystal confirms she's on the line, we'll add that public update as report number 4D.
Okay.
Just make sure that we give her enough time. So thank you. She could text Tatiana.
She's on the line.
Oh, she's on the line.
Yeah, she's on the line.
Okay, so what I'll do is let's Renee, if we could, oh, I see Crystal Yazzie. I apologize, I do see you there. So Renee, if I may, I'm gonna actually ask that we move Crystal's community report up to 4A. And then Renee, you'll go next. And then we'll wrap up with our remaining time with an update from the TCRP and the budget. Is that okay, Renee? Thumbs up?
Sure, that works with me just fine. Yeah, I'm good with that. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, so let's do that. Is there any other additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, by consensus, what would the vote be? How many task force members?
Task force members, it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in consensus.
Okay, so 7 approved, 0, 7, 0.
One.
Yeah, and 1. So there's 8 of us.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we're gonna move right to Crystal. So I'll do a warning for anybody who's on the call in this task force with what we are tasked to do. It can enter into a lot of emotional information. It can be triggering at any time that you feel overwhelmed. You can always pause the volume or drop off the call to center yourself and to be in a better place. We do live stream this, so you could always come back to the conversation. And if you need to be connected to an advocate or need to process these strong emotions, we have that available. We have here in the room Shama I know you call me Shama, to help guide with those big feelings. So a lot of the work that we do is trauma informed. I know hybrid sometimes doesn't allow us to provide that in-person care. So I just want to make sure for everybody on the call that we value where you're coming at today in your mental capacity. And we'll open up the floor to Crystal. You have the floor, Crystal.
Did she drop off? Oh, we may have lost Crystal. Let's see.
Yeah, she left. She's no longer on the line.
Okay. Okay, so what we'll do is there might be some connection issues. So once Crystal gets back on, we'll see when she's able to join us and we'll give her the floor. So Renee, I appreciate that you were able to delay your report, but you have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And again, thank you. Yeah, today Bene Shea Renee Gray Yen and Shekia Anish Lawrence Aski Bashish Chin, Beeper 20 She, Days Chinish Nala without the Nanshle. A yamba to date na shadow Albuquerque to Shagan. Just how I exist in this political climate that we are in right now. And I only say that I identify as a native trans woman is for political reason, and that's just really just to show everyone in these great spaces as well as just in public that we still are existing, we still are amongst people. Oftentimes we're shoved into a corner and we're always pushed aside and forgotten, and we become an invisible population. So trainings like this are very important because it not only highlights the discrimination as well as the high disproportionate rates that we face as a community. It also allows you to start having that conversation, questions, and really put and take back to your organizations or business place to start implementing a lot of the knowledge that you are going to learn today. So I just want to say that I am with the Missy Murder Denied Relative Coalition. I'm the secretary of that board. And it's good to see everyone here. And professionally, I have served, sorry, I have served as a crisis counselor. Oops. Sorry, I'm getting documents here. I have served as a crisis counselor, researcher, and consultant, developing and facilitating culturally grounded LGBTQ two-spirit trainings for tribal communities and organizations, hospitals, and law enforcement agencies. My work includes contributions to UNN's research on Native trans women's health, and I collaborated on a transgender programming project for federal inmates with the Change companies, focusing on culturally responsive rehabilitation and reentry support. I was also part of an Indigenous outreach team for the 2022 U.S. Trans Survey, helping promote participation among Indigenous trans and Two-Spirit people to ensure our experiences were represented in a national data. Additionally, I've guest lectured at the University of Washington Graduate School of Social Work and have provided safe zone trainings for tribal organizations, hospital staff, schools such as Gallup-McKinley County School, and FBI agents. And these continue to build understanding and empathy across institutions. Beyond my professional titles, I carry the lived experiences of being a Native trans woman who have survived discrimination, homelessness, incarceration, addiction, and violence. These experiences have shaped my purpose to help bridge understanding, restore trust, and transform systems that have too often failed our most vulnerable relatives. Through my initiative, Rewriting Our Story, Shifting Accountability to Address Gender Bias Violence, I've learned that rebuilding trust begins with truth-telling, humility, and genuine relationship. This presentation is meant to open conversation, not just share data. Together, we can explore how law enforcement can move effectively, engage with Indigenous and LGBTQ two-spirit plus communities, and how we as advocates, relatives, and partners can strengthen relationship built on trust, equity, and compassion. Let's begin by understanding the context behind this work, where mistrust began and what it will take to rebuild it. Again, thank you very much for allowing me to be amongst you guys and share virtual space as well as your time to provide this. I believe it's a very important and vital presentation because it'll be a learning experience for all of us. So I'm gonna get my presentation up. All right, does everyone see my screen okay? It's good.
Now we do.
Okay. Alrighty. My internet connection okay as well? Is my feed okay? It's not stalling or anything. Just make sure that everything is good to go. All right, thank you again. So here is the start of the presentation. So for generations, Indigenous and LGBTQ two-spirit communities have experienced policing, criminalization, and under protection. And many survivors, especially two-spirit and trans individuals, have felt unsafe or ignored when seeking help. This mistrust didn't appear overnight. It comes from a colonial system of policing that was never designed to protect Indigenous people. Historically, police enforce removal, assimilation, and control, not safety. That history echoes today when families report missing loved ones and are met with silence, delays, or disbelief. But we're here because we want to shift that story from a system that silences to one that listens, from harm to healing. So in the 2022 U.S. Transgender Survey, it gathered responses from over 92,000 people who identified as transgender or non-binary, the largest of its kind in U.S. history. Nearly half of transgender people and non-binary respondents reported feeling very uncomfortable asking police for help. Another quarter felt somewhat uncomfortable. That means nearly 3 out of 4 trans people hesitate to call law enforcement, often out of fear of being misgendered, disrespected, or dismissed. These numbers matter because they reflect more than perception, they show lived truth. Trust must be earned through consistency, not words alone. When communities fear seeking help, it ripples across every part of life. Over 60% of respondents said their gender identity made them uncomfortable asking for police assistance. 47% had negative healthcare experiences. 27% avoided care entirely. Behind each number is a person, someone's child, sibling, or partner carrying the weight of being unseen. This reminds us that policing, healthcare, and mental health are connected systems. When one fails, the others are impacted too. So in collecting accurate and inclusive LGBTQ two-spirit plus data is very important. When data ignores our identities, we become statistically invisible. All and invisible people don't get funded, protected, or prioritized. Inclusive data collection allows us to identify where inequities exist, direct resources where they're most needed, uphold tribal data sovereignty, ensuring that Indigenous nation controls how data about how data about their people is used. When our data reflects who we truly are, our systems can respond with care instead of harm. According to the FBI's 2022 hate crime statistics, hate crimes targeting LGBTQ plus people rose significantly. Incidents against transgender individuals increased by nearly 40% in 1 year. Behind every statistics is a story of fear, vulnerability, and courage. Each report is not just an incident, it's a call for structural change, for better prevention, and for stronger partnership between law enforcement and community advocates. So gender bias in law enforcement, gender bias often determines who is believed, protected, or ignored. A male survivor may be told, "You're fine, toughen up. Your boys will be boys," kind of a thing mentality. A trans woman might be misgendered in report or dismissed altogether. Oftentimes, this can be a traumatizing experience in itself. This bias leads to underreporting, re-traumatization, and erasure. And we must move from assumptions to understanding, from skepticism to support. That begins with trauma-informed, gender-aware training and accountability within departments. And so we are told, and it is ingrained in us as we are conditioned to only accept this Western concept and idea since the day we were born. When your mother gave birth to you, the doctor most likely pulled you out by a male doctor and announced to the world, "It's a boy, it's a girl." And so at that point is when you're told and you're put into a box. Gender is not fixed. It's shaped by cultural, time, and lived experiences. Sex assigned at birth is not the same as gender identity or gender expression. Many indigenous nations understood this long before Western systems labeled it divergent. Two-spirit relatives have always embodied both masculine and feminine balance, carrying sacred roles as healers, artists, and leaders. Restoring that understanding helps law enforcement approach individuals with respect and accuracy. And so here, gender is a complex concept that extends beyond simple definitions. This section explores gender and its relationship to sexual orientation, emphasizing the ways these ideas are shaped and understood within society. The diagram titled Gender Spectrum serves as a visual guide for understanding the multifaceted nature of gender. It shows that gender is not a singular experience, but rather comprises several interconnected layers. These layers represent the different ways individuals experience and express gender, challenging the notion that gender can be strictly categorized. From an early age, we are taught, told, and conditioned to accept a Western concept of gender. These beliefs become deeply ingrained, shaping how we perceive ourselves and others. The conditioning encourages acceptance of a narrow framework, often overlooks the broader and more diverse experience of gender. Sex assigned at birth, this yellow circle you see on your screen here, the yellow circle represents sex assigned at birth, referring to the biological classification assigned to at birth based on primarily or physical characteristics, either penis or vagina, is how the doctor would say you're either a boy or a girl based on your genitalia. The label is commonly assigned as boy or girl and is separate from an individual's internal identity. Sex can also be viewed as a spectrum. Intersex individuals are included in this group. They have variations in reproductive, sexual, or chromosomal autonomy that do not fit standard definitions of male or female. This indicates that the binary categorization is not comprehensive, even in the biological level. Oftentimes, when it comes to intersex people, they are history tells us that intersex babies were immediately taken from the mother, and um, operation was the first procedure to create a vagina because it was much easier for a doctor to create a vagina versus a penis. And so oftentimes when these intersex babies would grow and they didn't feel like they were either male or female, and they were the opposite of that. So intersex community created a community of itself. So intersex does happen at more commonly than we think. I believe it was 1 in 1,000. And so it's not a phenomenon. It's just more so than we believe it is. So throughout history, various cultures have recognized gender and sex as fluid or multifaceted. The binary approach was widely institutionalized in Western society and medicine, especially after the 18th century, which contributed to less recognition of intersex individuals and non-binary gender conceptions. So moving forward to the pink circle is gender identity. This is perhaps the most crucial layer because it represents a person's internal, deeply felt psychological sense of being a man, a woman, both or neither, or somewhere else along the spectrum. It's who you know yourself to be. You see male and female on the sides, but there are other gender identities such as cisgender, transgender. So cisgender it describes someone's whose gender identity aligns with the sex they were assigned at birth. Transgender describes someone whose gender identity differs from the sex they were assigned at birth. We also have non-binary, which is an umbrella term for gender identities that are not exclusively male or female. You also have gender fluid, which refers to a person whose gender identity is not fixed and may change over time. You also have transgender male or female, are also similar to transgender, are also included, referring to individuals transitioning to live as their identified gender. This layer highlights the gender identity and internal compass unique to each individual's gender expression, the outermost blue circle you see here on your screen. Finally, the outermost blue circle, we have gender expression. This is how a person outwardly presents their gender to the world. It's about what you do and how you show your gender through things like clothing, hairstyles, mannerism, voice, and behavior. Here we see masculine and feminine, but also terms like androgynous and non-conforming. So androgynous means it describes an expression that blends masculine and feminine traits. Gender non-conforming refers to someone whose gender expression does not align with traditional expectations for their assigned gender. So it's vital to remember that gender expression is distinct from gender identity. For example, a man might have a very feminine expression, or a woman might have a masculine expression, and their gender identity remains valid. So the gender spectrum shows us that gender is a rich tapestry woven from our sex assigned at birth, our deeply personal gender identity, and our outward gender expression. These three elements interact in unique ways for each and every individual, creating a diverse and vibrant spectrum of human experiences. So now let's shift our attention to the smaller diagram on the right side titled Sexual Orientation. This section is crucial for understanding that gender is separate from attraction. While often conflated, who you are, your gender, is distinct from who you are attracted to, your sexual orientation. So you see here again, sex assigned at birth, similar to the gender spectrum. This diagram again shows sex assigned at birth and gender identity, reminding us that these are the foundational elements of a person. However, the focus here is on how attraction is directed, not to the specific of one's own gender. Okay, gender identity. And so below, you'll see a list of attractions and sexual attractions, emotionally, romantically, and or physically attracted. It's an enduring pattern of attraction. I have included a more comprehensive list here. Heterosexual is attraction to a different gender. Homosexual, attraction to the same gender. Bisexual, attraction to two or more genders. Pansexual is an attraction regardless of gender. This differs from bisexual in that it often emphasizes attraction to a person's qualities rather than a specific gender identity. You also have asexual, which is a lacking sexual attraction to anyone or experiencing very little sexual attraction. And also, finally, you have demisexual, experiencing sexual attraction only after forming a strong emotional bond. So this section really, it clarifies that while our gender identity and expressions are fundamentally to who we are, our sexual orientation defines the pattern of our attraction. These are two distinct but equally valid parts of human identity. The diagram encourages us to view gender and attraction through a more inclusive and nuanced lens. Understanding these distinctions fosters empathy, respect, and more accurate appreciation of the diverse identities that make up our world. By recognizing the spectrum of identity and attraction, we can create more inclusive spaces for everyone. And so historically, before colonization, our people didn't shame gender diversity. We actually celebrated it. Two-spirit relatives were respected for their insights, often serving as spiritual advisors or community mediators. Colonization disrupted that harmony, introducing gender binaries and religious intolerance that erased sacred balance. To rebuild trust today, we must relearn what our ancestors already know or knew, that inclusion and respect are part of justice. And so oftentimes, if not already heard, but you always hear of intersectionality as well as cultural competency. So intersectionality is the recognition that individuals may encounter multiple overlapping forms of discrimination. For example, a two-spirit or transgender person may simultaneously experience racism, sexism, and transphobia and classism all at once. These intersecting challenges shape the lived experiences of individuals, making it essential to consider all facets of identity when addressing inequality. The term intersectionality was coined by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989. It describes how overlapping identities affect personal experiences and influence how injustice is addressed. If intersectionality is ignored, efforts to respond to inequality may be inadequate. Applying intersectionality thinking requires a broader and more inclusive understanding of identity. So cultural competency involves gaining insight into a person's background through active inquiry, attentive listening, and ongoing learning. This approach avoids assumption and fosters genuine understanding. In law enforcement and other professional setting, cultural competency means recognizing both individuals' identity and cultural traditions when interacting with victims or conducting investigations. So when it comes to supporting trans and LGBTQ people, trans and LGBT may conceal aspects of themselves for safety reasons. Oftentimes, when coming to your services, they have to negotiate what identity to bring to the table, and that is not a good thing to do when you're trying to get services from someone. So when providing support, it is important to consider the whole person in order to better address their needs. And I've always said that you can't help someone partially, you want to help someone totally. So you want to have them come to the table as their authentic self. So when it comes to survivors in tribal communities, we face unique challenges and barriers. Fear of rejection or outing. Oftentimes, being outed can lead to more violence and even death, especially if someone is not out to their parents or the family. So it becomes a very unsafe situation for that person. Lack of confidentiality, and I think this definitely goes with everyone who goes to IHS in a small community or a small clinic where you have relatives working there. So confidentially in that aspect is very important, and it tends to lack as well. And there's culturally safe services. And so trainings like this are very important for services that provide to the community because it allows them to learn and how to better serve LGBTQ people. And then many choose silence over risk. Again, going back to being rejected as well as misgendered and really just pushed aside. And so oftentimes that tends to be traumatizing and people like myself as a trans woman, I don't want to call police officers. I don't want to go to the clinic for many of reasons. And so that is something that we also have to navigate through. And so rebuilding trust means creating local, visible, and affirming services that tell survivors you are seen and you belong here. So as I was saying, it is a honorable thing to be a part of the Missing and Murdered Denied Relative Coalition, because oftentimes you don't hear voices or stories like mine, as well as us being at the table as well. It's highly unlikely that someone else or a trans person or an LGBTQ person is seated at the table as well. So violence against LGBTQ two-spirit individuals mirrors or exceeds national averages. Over 60% of bisexual women and 47% of trans people have experienced intimate partner violence. BIPOC trans women, including Indigenous and Black women, face the highest risk. These numbers expose not only individual harm, but systemic neglect. Our goal is to replace silence with safety, education, and empathy. And I've been sharing a lot of the statistics, and this is more of a general population, general statistics. I'm guessing that if something similar was done on Apple Nation, the numbers would be outrageous. So this is just a kind of a standardized survey that was done to people who identify as trans. So I'm guessing it would be a lot worse with Navajo trans people or LGBTQ people. And so being trauma informed means asking what happened to you instead of what's wrong with you. It means leading with compassion and understanding that survival behaviors are not moral failings, they are response to pain. When we pair trauma-informed care with cultural grounding, like ceremony, storytelling, and care, we create response to heal instead of harm. So trust is not rebuilt by slogans, it's rebuilt by consistency and action. It takes training that centers trauma and culture. It also takes partnership with two-spirit advocates and community healers, co-response models that unite officers and support specialists. Transparency, accountability, and respect must become policy, not preferences. The MDR task force can model what trust looks like by hosting listening sessions between families and police, creating survivor-centered protocols, funding community advocates within departments, protecting Indigenous data sovereignty. You have the power to set an example of justice rooted in Diné values and self-determination. So from harm to healing begins with acknowledgement for pain, history, and resilience. Then comes accountability, followed by consistency. And Diné teaching, harmony or hajong is at the heart of justice. When law enforcement embraces that same principle, communities begin to heal alongside them. So allyship and advocacy is not a label, it's a daily practice. It means listening, learning, and standing beside our Two-Spirit and LGBTQ plus relatives. In law enforcement, allyship looks like respectful communication, connecting bias and misgendering, ensuring everyone is treated with dignity. When allies act with intention, they strengthen the web of community safety for all. And so key takeaways, rebuilding trust is not a one-time event. It's a long-term relationship. Inclusion makes justice stronger. When we lead with integrity, empathy, and cultural respect, we move closer to balance. Our paths cross today not by accident, but by purpose. And so now that we've explored data, history, and solutions, let's reflect together. What does trust look like between our communities and law enforcement? How can Two-Spirit and LGBTQ plus spirit on leaders help shape the change? What partnership will sustain accountability and transparency? And thank you for your openness and your courage in doing this work. And as a Diné trans woman, I carry these conversations not as theory, but as lived truth. When we lead with honesty and compassion, we don't just reform systems, we restore balance and belonging. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. We appreciate the presentation. Could you go back to your just previous slide in terms of discussion questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, perfect. So the first discussion question is, what does trust look like between community and law enforcement? I just wanted to see if the task force membership or those who are on the call, if you want to go over some of the questions. The second question is, how can Two-Spirit and LGBTQ plus leaders guide change? And the third discussion is, what partnerships foster accountability and respect? So you can unmute yourself if you want to provide some feedback in terms of the work we're doing here at the task force and how we could support our relatives who are victimized by the missing and murdered Diné relative crisis and identify as Two-Spirit LGBTQ plus transgender.
If I may share, because I've spoken a little bit about my personal experience with law enforcement, and it's been a challenge as well as more I think of a trauma response to not seek help from an officer. In my past, I as an addict as well as a sex worker because society pushing me at that brink because employers weren't hiring me I had to find means to survive. And so in order for me to live and exist and survive, I had to do sex work. And in order for me to be in that headspace, I also had to cope as well as use drugs or alcohol to kind of numb the reality out of myself. And so getting into that aspect, I think really while living unsheltered as well, I think my experiences with officers has always been negative experience. I've never had a positive experience ever in my whole 44 years or in the 20 plus years I've been an adult on my own. It's always been a very horrible one. I've had officers who would handcuff me, throw me around, throw me into a car, make me walk in snow without my shoes on, or had officers who kind of like hinted to me for sexual favors. So it's never been a positive interaction, and it's always them calling me names, telling me you're wrong or you're not normal. So really hurtful things. And so it's never been a positive relationship. And so going back 2015, 14, when I did my first training ever, I did it to 35 male, mostly FBI agents. And that interaction in itself was very uncomfortable because I've never really had a conversation with an officer at that point. It was more so them controlling me. But it was uncomfortable, but it was also a learning experience. But it also gave me insight on how male officers operate. The conversation about lesbianism was a difficult and challenging conversation to navigate with officers because they continuously um, sexualize the whole idea of lesbianism as well. And when it came to talking about gay and transgender people, they pushed back and like, no, we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to go there. We don't want to imagine that. But it's always this whole objectification as well as separation when it comes to men, trans women at that. And so I've been on a healing process of trying to figure out ways I can better handle a situation or an experience with an officer, and I've still yet to come to that. And so the questions here come from my personal experience of how and what that looks like for other people who's had a positive experience with officers, as well as a negative experience. Because again, I've only had negative experiences with officers. I've never had that positive one. So I think really just will also be enlightening for me at that, from people answering other questions.
Appreciate that one, providing that insight and being vulnerable to share your experience and definitely how we can do better. So I do see Sunshine has her hand up. Sunshine, you have the floor, Shada.
Thank you, Delegate Crotty and Renee, for sharing the presentation. I think it's much needed, and I know that in our work for our missing and murdered Dine relatives, a lot of people don't understand that our LGBTQ two-spirit relatives are a part of the population that goes missing or that is murdered or that is involved in human trafficking. And so sometimes law enforcement or agency representatives don't know how to work with our LGBTQ relatives. So I think this presentation is critical for law enforcement. If we could, as a task force, make the recommendation or find out, and I don't think we have any law enforcement representatives on this call from the police department or from the criminal investigations, but if we could recommend that this presentation be presented to officers. And then also at the judicial level, I think in the courts, we also don't have individuals who are educated and informed on how to work with our LGBTQ relatives. And, you know, just hearing of one experience that occurred in one of our courtrooms in one of our communities for our LGBTQ relative, it was heartbreaking that the support was not there and that crimes were committed and not taken seriously. So for me, it's definitely something I think we need to encourage our law enforcement to participate in. And then also for the task force, if we could look at the Victims' Rights Act and see if we can highlight those areas where we need to be specific and sensitive to the needs of our LGBTQ relatives. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And then we'll go to Zunipa. Shadeja, you have the floor.
Ayate, good morning, everyone.
Mhm.
Just thank you so much, Renee, for this presentation. I know it's very needed, and a lot of the words and the lingo you used, I unfortunately only ever hear off the reservation and like when I was in college and undergrad and graduate school. So I think it's really important we start using these terms more and normalizing them, in Dine. And same for our Navajo translations. I know there's words out there that I'm still trying to learn myself. But I just wanted to point out, being an advocate ally, like you said, it is a daily practice. And, I do volunteer as a victim witness, grassroots for a lot of our Two-Spirit LGBTQIA plus folks. And I see the injustices at every turn. And I see, from judicial side, legislative side, executive side, law enforcement, other victim advocates that are system based are so, they don't know how to help when it comes to, for example, every person in one of these cases I've been working with, every victim advocate, every courtroom official, every law enforcement, all assumed, with the domestic violence case, intimate partner violence case, they assume the victim is always a female and that the perpetrator is always a male. And it is just so upsetting when they hear, no, they're both the same gender, it's male on male, domestic violence, or it's female on female domestic violence. Once they hear that, or even, a male victim with a female perpetrator, you see how fast the response and how they don't take those other cases seriously. But unfortunately, when it comes to a female victim with a male perpetrator, everyone's there to jump on board. So I think, another presentation or recommendation from the task force that could be made is educating about, or even with the DAP and the violence prevention task group, educating that domestic violence is not just limited, to certain relationships, that it can apply to all. But I think it's, again, really important that we're hearing this morning. And, however we can continue to help, however we can get more of our leaders to speak up, we're here to help and assist. Thank you again.
Appreciate that. Renee, did you want to have some conversation back and forth, or how do you feel comfortable?
I don't mind whatever way, whatever everyone is comfortable with. I don't mind whichever is available.
Right, so from the comments and your experience, where do you think, so I heard the Navajo Nation Victim Rights Act. Do you have a copy of that act?
I do not know.
So that could be a starting point for the task force, is to make sure that we're providing more public education, community training, and reviewing the Victim Rights Act to see if there's additional areas or layers that we need to include. I know Chicha here works very intimately with the Victims' Rights Act. So I think at one point you did provide a presentation to the task force.
Yes, I did.
And so what we could move forward is look for that link and then have more of an active conversation and review it to see how we want to amend, update, maybe go over critical areas where if the courts or law enforcement or the community, what's their interpretation and how we could strengthen and what additional resources would be needed then to make sure that we're integrating the Victim Rights Act to meet the needs of the community. One thing I wanted to ask Renee is back in, well, I'm just gonna say pre-COVID, the Missing and Murdered Dinner Relatives Coalition, we hosted a public hearing in Gallup, and we had a presentation from our relatives regarding transgendered and how that uh, may complicate or working with law enforcement when there's actual a missing relative. Some of the challenges that were raised were if the family was not supporting the individual's identification or how they self-identified, and, you know, a picture, another picture would be used or another name. And so we would need guidance in terms of how do we navigate those conversations, because when we're working with families, it is very traumatic to not know where one of your relatives are. And the last thing we want to do is, in terms of communication to the public, is looking for an individual who may not identify and how that picture is being
Yeah.
distributed. And so I think we would also look at that missing person's flyer to make sure with the community on how we can navigate those areas before we get in a situation. Like we wouldn't want to do it right when we're in crisis mode. We would want to do this package. So let me know your thoughts on best practices, how to move forward, and we could start reading some of those recommendations and start looking at, I know Sunshine, we were talking about more of these healing centers or healing conversations, and so that could be one of the areas that we focus in on. Renee,
Yeah.
feedback on
I,
that?
Yeah, of course. I think there's a really fine line between what family is comfortable providing as well as what the person who's missing. Like for example, if someone who is out to the family and out to the world and everyone identifies them and sees them as someone who identifies as either lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and everyone is aware of how they identify. I think in that instance, I believe it's a lot easier to promote and create flyers of the missing LGBTQ person because again, you're not battling family biases on how they should post and create these flyers. Versus someone like and going back to someone who's out. I think everything is so easily translated and created and sent out. But as someone who is only out to their friends and not their family, I think there's a really fine line between what can be shared and how it can be how it can be posted. And so language becomes very important in that instance. I think really it's not because as an outsider you don't want to identify someone for them if you're not identifying as that, like say someone who is transgender and they're not out to their family and they don't identify as transgender with their family, so they tend to um hide that part of their life. And so when it comes to language, I think some maybe languages like the person may identify as transgender, but the family is going to be saying no, they're not. They're a boy. Their name is Bob, I don't know. But they go by Michelle. I'm just throwing names out there. I think in that instance, I think really conversating with the family that, you know, people may know Bob as Michelle, and is it okay to maybe post both names, Bob? And I think one thing I should have shared in this presentation was the four-tier questions. I do believe I might have mentioned it in the past, where when someone is doing an intake form, they have the four-tier questions that has the person's legal name, Bob, their preferred name, Michelle, their sex sign at birth is male, and their current gender identity is transgender. But a lot can be said about someone who by picture, if someone who's out to the friends but not to the family. I think it's again it's that fine line that we'll have to conversate and really talk with the family on how much they're willing to share. Because again, you don't want to identify someone for them if they have not openly said, "Oh, I identify as a trans person or a lesbian or gay or bisexual." But I think really it's really important when it comes to trans people because again, you don't want to misgender someone if they're not comfortably in the body that that they have. So again, I think it's a really fine line. I think this conversation can be really dealt with in uh um a more explicit LGBTQ 101 training, again, where you're talking about biases and phobias and pronouns and gender identity, exploring all of those concepts. I was trying to make this presentation incorporate all that, but it was going to like 50, 60 slides, and I think that'd be a whole lot just to do in an hour. So I condensed it to what I believe were important parts of the LGBTQ community. But again, I think going back to your question, I think it's really important to be in conversation as well as have these trainings to create the language that is very respectful in that aspect if someone is not open to the family, but they're open to the friends. Again, yeah. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback and maybe we could have an ongoing discussion about the 4-tier questions, making sure that training is part of our Dine Action Plan partnership and how
Yeah.
we integrate that through the Navajo Nation system and working with our community-based advocates.
So the 4-tier question was created to really help with insurance claims. Because again, you can't give someone's preferred name when you're billing an insurance company. So the 4-tier question was developed just for that specific reason, but it's really important. It's also important to use an intake form because again, you don't want to misgender someone that's coming into your clinic, but also you want to give a positive experience for someone who identifies as trans or trans woman or trans man or a lesbian or whatever way they want to identify, you don't want to push them away. You want to bring them in. So I think language in that aspect is very important. And that tier 4 question helps alleviate the embarrassing questions to ask. Like I always get the example of a trans man coming into a woman's health clinic requesting for a pap smear or something of that nature for a woman's health. You saw the front desk worker, the trans man walks in, the front desk worker is seeing a man in front of her or in front of the clerk, and the man is saying, "I'm here for a pap smear," and the girl the receptionist is confused. So having the 4-tier questions can answer those embarrassing questions of what you're a man. Are you sure you're in the right place? And making a huge scene of answering uncomfortable questions. So the 4-tier questions alleviates that stress of asking those unbearable questions. So when you have this 4-2 questions, you have a trans man who has legally changed their name. And so they have their name in either legally and preferred name, and their sex assigned at birth is female, but they currently identify as man or trans man, however they want to identify. And so that kind of says, oh, okay, your sex assigned at birth is female. So yeah, you still have the anatomy of someone who has ovaries and whatnot. So again, I think that 4-tier question really alleviates that uncomfortable question and prying to someone's life. Uh, so I can definitely share that if I can find it in my file, or I can share it with Tatiana later.
Okay, and we could add that as part of our resource guide and a future follow-up training. And for the advocates who are on the call, if this is integrated in training and then how we could make sure, Navajo Nation employees or programs also have access to this type of training, that would be good as a follow-up. Are there any? Go
I think
ahead.
the last time I shared the 4-tier questions or shared that maybe it's a good idea to use when it comes to victim services as well as advocates who go out to someone who's experienced some type of violence. I do believe the last time I brought it up, it was pushed aside, and it was said that it was going beyond HIPAA compliance. It was violating HIPAA. And I don't think it does, because again, you're asking these important questions for a service provider to provide adequate services versus you trying to guess who they are for them. And so I don't think it is violating HIPAA compliance in any way, shape, or form. Because again, this was created for insurance billing, but also we've implemented it in UNM Health Services. I do believe some IHS services also use the 4-2 questions. And I do know a lot of other agencies, resources also utilizes the 4-2 questions again to kind of provide a better, more positive experience for the resource centers, as well as provide adequate services for everyone as a whole, not just specifically LGBTQ people.
Mhm. Okay. Okay, appreciate so we'll definitely have some follow-up, and continue to have this dialogue. We'll work with, Sergeant or Detective Begay and her team at the Missing Murder Unit, with Navajo Nation Police Department, and get some insight on what questions are they asking family during their intake. And that leads us into a great conversation about the Tribal Community Response Plan. But I want to do a time check. We're at 9:40, and I did want to get back. I saw that Crystal's back on the line. So Crystal, I wanted to see if you're ready to unmute yourself and then share your advocacy work with families, and how we can connect resources and support efforts. You have the floor.
Okay, hello, everybody. Good morning. Yate Bene. My name is Crystal Yazi, and my plans are Sintakad Nishne, Bipatotni Bashichin, Gotche, Chanela Topana Ashiche. Thank you so much for opening this up to the public to allow the families to attend, or anybody who's in solidarity behind MMIP to stand and come together and allow our voices to be heard. So on that note, I am a survivor of a brutal beating in Gallup, New Mexico, and I noticed Claire Hood is on the line, and I have nothing but nice things to say about her. She was the only, when I went through the process of fighting for justice and healing, I didn't know what I experienced. And unfortunately, the programs that were designed for me, I had advocates that were on their phones instead of comforting. So that was my experience until I went through advocacy on my own journey of fighting for justice. And I was able to meet Claire Hood, who was the DA advocate in my case. And she was amazing. I mean, when you think about an advocate, you think about empathy, you think about understanding, you think about not being judgmental and victim blaming and discrimination. I did not feel that with Claire Hood. She was able to walk the process of the court with me, which I think is lacking for my families that I have spoken to. A court proceeding process of how the judge system is and the court systems. And, us as families, we're already mentally and emotionally and physically going through a battle to understand our suffering and our pain and our loved ones. And so to try to be in a headspace, to be able to come up with questions and how to advocate, it's hard. It's very hard. And that is where advocates come into place. But unfortunately, I have come across advocates that just like the title, but they do not advocate beyond and more for these families. It would be nice, and that's not to say that that's current. I'm just saying in my experience, that's what I felt and seen. But unfortunately, I did go into hiding. I was embarrassed. I struggled with survivor's guilt, which I didn't know was a thing. And I went into hiding, and it was Emily Pike and Ashlyn Mike, our children, our babies, that are being targeted and attacked. And I came out of hiding shortly after coming out of hiding, I met several survivors that also went into hiding. So there are survivors of these brutal crimes. We just go into hiding because we feel like we're not supported, we're not heard, and we're judged. We're judged by our own people, we're judged by our family, we're judged by, well, they should have known better. Well, why did they do that? Oh, they were drinking. Why? It's never the issue of the root of why our people are suffering through addiction. For all we know, they might have been molested growing up and they didn't know that wasn't okay. So just education, education. But Claire Hood, thank you. So I turned my hurt into helping families. And it is triggering, but it's healing at the same time. I, worked with my psychologist and managed my PTSD, my anxiety, my major depression disorder. And I made sure that I was able to heal before I extended my help to families. And so Dominique Molinez, her case was so similar to mine. I reached out to the family and I told my story to them, and they accepted my help and my advocacy based on my knowledge. And they've been wonderful, standing with them in solidarity. Amber Crotty, I've walked on you on awareness walk, and so I've an MMDR, Vanji. She is one that I have been able to walk with. I've walked in Rama for my son's father, my children's father was a victim of MMIM in South Dakota, Pine Ridge. He was tragically murdered. We did fight for justice for him, but unfortunately, he only got 5 years. We dealt with that as a family as well. And so moving forward, I just had some recommendations. And I already have them written down, so I know we're on a time limit. But the recommendations that I wanted to recommend was the chapter houses. I have done presentations in Ayambato. I am from Ayambato. I have done education on my resources. Rael Rose Bentley. She's also missing from Shiprock. I met her sister Georgiana Harrison, which I see her on the line as well. She also came to the chapter and did a presentation on behalf of her sister. And I was honored enough to make it to Shiprock to walk in memory of and in honor of missing right now. And so I have opened learning from other advocates such as Georgiana and others. And so I met MMDR Vanji, and she told me about the organization that I was not aware of. So then I think a lot of families that I speak to are not aware of MMDR because I know I wasn't. So my idea was to have the chapter, how we have delegates for each chapter, to try to establish some sort of advocacy at the chapter houses. So when their community members face a missing or loved one murdered, there's a chapter officials that are trained with education and then collaborate with MMDR to have pamphlets there at their chapter. I was able to do it in Ayambato, so that's where my idea came from. The other suggestion was a healing circle group for our children. Our children who are missing loved ones. It's a healing group for them to come together and for them to relate to other families, the adults, the parents, to connect us as one, because we're all dealing with the same judgment possibly, and the same, maybe some of us don't have support. So I don't know, the logistics of that. I do know all of this will take time. Lastly, the concerns and recommendations of a missing board of some sort, including our Dine people who were taken from cities not from the Navajo Nation, but they're Dine. And so Pepita Red Hair is one of them, missing from Albuquerque, but her mother Anita's concerns were, why was she not on the Navajo Nation missing board? So I took the initiative of contacting Navajo Nation Winderock, and they informed me it was because she was missing from the city. Now I do know there are some Facebook groups that are delegated to getting those voices out, but it would just be nice if those the city natives that are missing are included in it because they do have census numbers and they are missing from the Dine land. And so I feel like they still qualify to still be accounted on those flyers. And then lastly, I think to prevent any sort of gatekeeping of resources and promoting them to the Navajo Nation. A lot of families are not aware. And so if we could just try to have the chapter houses, the presentations at the chapter houses, maybe from MMDR, if they could try to figure the logistics of that. And also, just education. Education is the most important thing for chapter officials to ensure that they know what to do when the community member and their family is going through a crisis, and how we have an emergency protocol plan for chapters to have some sort of MMIP protocol for these chapters to be implicated to help our families. And so these are just preventative action and resources recommendations from me. And hopefully you guys will be able to go over the logistics and try to see what we can do for that. And so that's all that I have for right now. Thank you for the time, and yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, thank you. It's good to hear from you and know that you're continuing your healing journey and helping families. Recently, we had debriefed on the search and rescue of our relative Sharon down there at Red Rock Community. And this did come up in terms of how to, what type of training chapter officials and staff would need when when an emergency arises, and how that's different from training when there's like a natural disaster. So if you have any resources, or if you're gathering information that what you think would be helpful at the chapter level, it's my understanding that every chapter should have an emergency management plan. And because they're in different regions, we know that, there will be different situations, but when it comes to a missing person, we could integrate some of the toolkit. Tatiana, can you just put the link of the toolkit in the chat for those who are joining the call and have access to that link? That is a coordinated effort working with the coalition, the nonprofit side of missing and murdered Dine relatives. We took the initiative to begin and just create that toolkit, so at least it gives some guidance to the family. And it's my understanding that it stays as a link, so as we update, that information would be available. So if you have access, Crystal, to that document, just give us some feedback and recommendations, because that could be the anchor of how we do community training when it comes to chapters. And what does it look like when you have a trauma-informed holistic response to the families? And it's gonna look very different than, let's say, when there's well, I don't understand how it'd be different, because when there's a flood or a fire, that's also very traumatic. So there should be trauma-informed training when it comes to any type of emergency in the community. So that is on one of our priorities, and our hope is that you can join the conversation and help us develop those resources, and we could then have a schedule on how we want to move out to the chapters. And I think we have a few chapters who have already reached out, and like Crown Point chapter and others, so that we can provide those services. Just wanted to get some feedback. I see Andrea's on the call from Four Corners Canine Search and Rescue. Andrea, your team was there on the ground. Did you want to give any feedback in terms of training at the chapter level, and what would be some maybe immediate needs that we could deploy? I think at the very least we could do the toolkit, but is there anything else you think we could deploy out to chapters so that they have a better sense and idea of what type of coordination is needed when it comes to a missing relative?
Yes, good morning. In conjunction with Renee's presentation today, Zunaba brought up a good point, which is the language. I think it's important for us to um, give more definition to the language of certain words just so roles are understood. It seemed like that was one of the challenges as far as when it came to, for example, the point of contact versus a community service representative versus family advocate. And also with advocacy, I think it's important if organizations or agencies have maybe an individual with an experience similar to the individual they're helping, they involve that individual and really maybe start to consider. I get education is important, but in some instances, experience may trump that education. As we have learned that with search and rescue, we have begin to learn that if there is a certain experience the family member is going through, we found that they usually withhold one important information. That usually comes about until later. And we find that they normally don't disclose this to law enforcement. Once we have determined a bigger picture or scope of what the situation may be, we look through the team members we have and what experience maybe they can relate to with the individual or the family, and we found that that is an important factor. For example, with this search and rescue, one of our teammates, Val, she lives in Gallup. Her sister is a victim of MMIP. Just shortly, her sister's remains were found. So, in that respect, she was able to connect with Sharon's family. And to that extent, they also requested that she stay there. So, she stayed there almost the entire time assisting the family. So, I think that's an important aspect if we have that within our organizations or agencies look look at that as well. And with chapter houses, we do think it is important. Yes, they do have a representative or an advocate or a liaison that too can connect with law enforcement and families when the situation presents where the chapter houses want to get involved. Also to clarify and understand what resources they do have and to what extent that they too can provide that to a search or to families. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Andrea, for that valuable feedback. I want to recognize that we do have Biski Yatsure, who has joined the call and is a task force member. So thank you, Shadeja, for joining the call. In terms of this conversation with community training, is there any other recommendations or best practices that we should take note of and then collectively work together on what that would look like for our chapters here? I do also want to mention the other recommendation was, and if MMDR Coalition has the capacity, or we could work with Four Corners Search and Rescue just to create that comprehensive missing and murdered Diné relatives poster. Navajo Nation Police Department has, informed and educated the task force that their flyer is specifically for missing cases out of their jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. So we need to expand, and the Missing and Murdered Diné Coalition had that comprehensive flyer. So Zenaba, do you know if that is being updated? I know you're also, up north supporting family, but is there some way that we could keep or look for the capacity or partnership for someone to help us with that comprehensive missing Diné relative poster?
Yeah, so that's definitely an issue. We've been trying to address with many families and communities reaching out to the coalition to let us know and ask us why NPD doesn't include their missing relatives. And we just finally heard from NPD themselves that their flyer only for missing persons only um, applies to our relatives again that were missing from on the reservation within the different 7 NPD districts. So that has been a project of the coalition to do a more comprehensive one. And the struggle to keep that updated is because, again, we only have 2 staff right now with the coalition. So it's one of our projects that's been, it does take time to check on a daily basis and to see, with the missing persons cases, some of them are decades long ongoing cases, and then some are recent, and some are found. The recent cases, they do get found, in a couple of days sometimes, and sometimes they become ongoing cases. So the struggle there is to get the correct and accurate missing persons status, because sometimes, which we're seeing with social media, for example, let's say Naval Police Department, they share a missing persons flyer as a Facebook post. And then when that happens, a lot of advocates, community members, families will download the image of that poster and repost it to their social media. But then, let's say a missing person is found for NPD. What NPD does, they go back to their original posts, and it could be from years back. We have all this tracked in our data system right now, but they edit their post and they swap out the photo. So then a post from years ago that had the person's picture of a missing persons flyer now has the located stamp across their face, and takes their image off of or kind of, blocks the image. So then, that takes time to go and find again. There's a lot of confusion there because, okay, MPD says the person was found, but then all these other people that downloaded the original photo of the flyer all say, no, this person's still missing. And that's the struggle with trying to have a larger database. And we just don't have the capacity right now, but it is an ongoing project. We have it more updated when we do, we have sets of binders that we take out when we do our tabling, and we've gone to quite a bit of chapters this year, and just some other public events where it's easier to have the printed version updated, but to have something online, just to be sensitive to families. Sometimes they tell us, why do you still have our missing persons poster up? They've been found, or they're okay, or whatever situation is going on, then they feel that's insensitive. So there's a lot of I do commend Navajo PD for they're already working on that specifically for the cases on the res, and it will take a bigger team. It could be a whole job in itself just to do that, to have an electronic version somewhere. We do have what we have currently as a coalition. We just haven't posted it to the public yet, as we're trying to navigate, a lot of the feedback we've been getting to do this. So I would love to hear from everyone on this call if you all have any suggestions. I know it's needed. I know we've been collecting a lot of the family made posters with Mesky's missing persons updates page. We have the flyer generator there. We have all of that. And then same for NPD for all the 4 corner state task groups, task forces, and then also a lot of other great nonprofits that help to make these as well. So there's a lot, but I just would love some feedback. Or I know with time we can save this for a future discussion, but I do know it really is important to have something that goes for all of missing and murdered Diné relative. Well, specifically missing Diné relatives, no matter where they are missing from.
Okay. Appreciate that, and knowing your capacity. So Dr. Gonzalez, in hearing the discussion and, you've been onboarded by Navajo Technical University with, funding from the Navajo Nation to develop a missing murdered, Diné relative database. Could you let us know what could be some possibilities, for the challenge of keeping the information updated? I know we've talked about what does that look like in the future? Could you just give us what, some suggestions could be, or, any recommendations you have right now?
Delegate Crotty, thank you for the opportunity. I think I need a little more information, a little more time to sort through what some options might be. There are products that have the ability to, I'll say, auto delete files that are created if they're produced as PDFs over a certain periods of time, and that would require the families or others to regenerate them, hopefully with current data. But tracking flyers and tracking document data in systems is not a trivial thing, given how widely distributed this type of communication expects to be, wants to be, and requires to be. So I would want to spend a little more time trying to understand the problem well enough to propose something that is two things. One is workable, but also cost effective. But certainly this is a very helpful conversation. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it. And so Twyla Shadija with Navajo Tech, to keep this in mind as you're onboarding staff. I know that you're in the process of interviewing and hiring, and so we'll come back, and maybe at our next public meeting is going to be on Thursday. The 23rd. Twyla, let's get ready just to give a presentation. We'll give an update on the database conversation that we had last week, and also in terms of how Navajo Tech is building up the office there, and what does that look like for the task force, so that everyone on the call knows what's the vision and how we can move forward collectively and start really helping one another implement some of these key areas. Does that sound feasible to you, Twyla? Okay, she may not be able to unmute, but for those who are new to the conversation, we have partnered with Navajo Tech. So Navajo Nation Council and the Navajo Nation President have been collectively, we have invested $1.75 million into developing a missing and murdered Diné relatives database. We've been talking to our federal partners, FBI analysts, Office of the Attorney General. I've talked to the U.S. Marshals. We've talked locally with like the city of Gallup. We'll be talking with Farmington detectives soon. We're going to be reaching out to, I think, the city of Phoenix and Albuquerque on how they track their cases so that we can just integrate. And our goal is to have a database that's a dashboard. They'll be public facing, so that's kind of more of the reporting and the public information. And our hope is that we could also build that confidential side. And so we all know what's the status of some of the cases and what we've been looking at, according to Detective Begay, is this increase in missing juveniles. And so I've worked with and reached out to behavioral health because they're receiving some intake calls. And so now we want to say is, okay, how can we integrate when a family reaches out to behavioral health for support because they have a child missing out of their home? And how can we connect them with PD to make that missing report, because they'll insert them into the federal database. And so the US Marshals are also, that's part of their mission is to help recover missing children. And so we'll continue to have those dialogues. We'll also be looking at some of these long-term cases and where they're at. And we hope to get an update from our FBI partners because they have that operation, I think it's called Return. And so they were supposed to look over some of these long-term cases, and we've yet to really hear any updates. So we'll reach out to Mr. Neal. So Rachel, we're gonna have our meeting tomorrow with the governor, Arizona governor's missing and murdered task force. And so we could see if working with our partners there, if we could get an update on some of these federal initiatives, because I don't think they're really giving us that dialogue. The Office of the Prosecutor, you have a working relationship with AUSA, and that's the U.S. Attorney's Office, but in their office, they have these designated employees to work on these issues, so we would like to get regular updates. So that would be Elliot Neal and also Regina Roadhorse. And so then maybe we could give them an opportunity just to give us that update as we move forward. Okay, so appreciate it. I'm glad that you're here. We have this, we're under the umbrella of the Dine Action Plan. And so we participate also, I know I participate in the violence prevention calls, the data calls, and that's now we're also on the vulnerable adult amendments. We're doing amendments to the Navajo Nation Children Code. We're working with the prosecutor's office to amend Title 17 criminal code. And there's one more I'm working on. I'm gonna look at my calendar. So there's some policy updates that we'll provide in our report. So we'll send that out before we officially send it out to council. So we have a report due on October 20th to leadership. And so we'll collect all of these recommendations and provide that report. So I'm just gonna do a time check. We're at 10:10. I could move the conversation for the tribal community response plan to our next meeting on the 23rd. And so for the budget update, we were successful in getting all of our recommendations approved at council. So that means funding for UNHS, who provides Navajo or Utah Navajo Health Services, who provide services not only in Utah, but for our Navajo territories, provided over $1 million to Northern Arizona Victim Witness Services, and they provide services in the Arizona territories. The task force was able to secure funding for the Office of the Prosecutor Victim Advocates to increase their vehicles to provide services. The $750,000 to Navajo Technical University to continue with the database. There was also $500,000 for the Dine Action Plan to continue that work with the facilitators or increasing their capacity. Other funding went to Navajo Nation Department of Police, the police department for their missing and murdered unit. And in addition, we provided some funding for the Navajo Nation criminal investigators so that they could expand their work to help support some of their cases. I want to see some additional funding that we were able to work with the council also and the president's office is just about $1.2 million to get license plate readers. And so when there's a missing person or an Amber Alert, we're gonna start deploying these readers across Navajo Nation. So we have a better idea of who's traveling through Navajo Nation. And so there has been some pilot studies and we'll move forward with getting that equipment out to the community. I know that we have talked about drones and drone training. Oh, I apologize. And there was also funding awarded to Four Corners Search and Rescue, Four Corners Canine Search and Rescue of $250,000. We're going to make sure that that funding remains with Four Corners Canine Search and Rescue for the intent, and that's to increase their communications because as in the debrief at Red Rock, there's areas of our nation that do not have communication. We have dark zones, so they need to increase their ability to communicate and to keep in contact during active searches, and some additional equipment to help with search and rescue. If it's vehicles that are enhanced to deal with the rugged terrain. And so, did I leave any out? I think that's what we were able to secure. Okay, and so what we'll move forward on as we talk about the victim, Navajo Nation Victim Rights Act is our goal to secure funding annually. So we'll work on what we call a Navajo Nation set aside, and that will, with all of those programs identified, what will be needed to not just depend on an annual supplemental, but so that we could secure funding for the future. And we've been able to recently set aside money for like hazardous cleanups on Navajo Nation. It also will set aside money, like let's say for water right litigation. And so we'll move forward with how to sustain and expand Navajo Nation victim rights. And what does that funding look like? We're looking at external funding from a conversation yesterday at Budget and Finance. We are going to help support Navajo Nation Police Department spend their federal dollars. Right now, it looks like they have just under $40 million from their 5-year contract. And so as that goes through the process, they are eligible costs when it comes to assisting with missing persons. They also have the ability to assist with community plans. And so we want to encourage them to start utilizing those federal dollars to help enhance services here on the Navajo Nation. So it's a great opportunity. It looks like they're gonna purchase about 100 vehicles for their officers. And then we could start talking about like maybe special equipment. But in all of that, we wanted to see how we could integrate behavioral health when it comes to crisis response teams. I think right now we just have them in certain agencies, but what does that Navajo Nation-wide response look like when we need to deploy out? We could look at, what happened at Red Rock. We could look at the fire, and then we could say how other search and rescues happen. We know that our Navajo Department of Emergency Management, I think, is down to 2 staff. And so they're very limited. So now we'll have to just coordinate. Abigail. So that's my update on the budget. And so if there's no other questions, are there any questions on the budget or how that'll help me? You could email, or we have this more informal discussion every Tuesday from 8:30 to 10, but that is the more of the working group. So it's individuals who are working on specific assignments, and we provide updates. So if you want to be part of that conversation and help out, we could definitely invite you to have that discussion. Join us. We're always looking for additional folks on the ground. So we're at the close of the meeting. Are there any announcements or questions before we adjourn? Kathy?
Yes, Patty, this is Banjing. Can I say something really quick?
Yes, you have the floor. Then I'll go to Tati.
Okay, thank you. So I would encourage the families to reach out to the BIA Missing and Murdered Persons Unit and get your flyers up on their website. And also, the BIA can offer up to $5,000 reward on behalf of your family member who was missing or was murdered. So just want to encourage the families to reach out to them and do that. Thank you.
Benji, do you have a contact number for them locally?
The only person I've been in contact is with Sean Garnett. I can send you that email. I am not home right now, but I
Okay,
can send the email out.
okay, perfect. We'll put that as part of our resource page.
Yeah.
Maybe share that on the screen right now, the council's resource page.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna share the council's resource page real quick.
Okay, it's on the screen.
Okay,
Hold on, let me just switch this. There we go.
okay. So we'll just scroll down a little bit. And so this is our attempt to start just collecting resources in collaboration. There's Vanjie there and Rosita when we were testifying at the federal government tribal consultation. We're actually preparing for our next tribal consultation soon, so we could start having those conversations too. But Dr., did you wanna, do you have an announcement?
Yes, we do have a community member on the line. She'd like to introduce herself. That's gonna be Gail Lamori. She just wanted to just kind of introduce herself to the task force.
Sure. Gail, if you're able to unmute, it's *6. Is she able to unmute? She's still on.
Also, because she is 839. Okay.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Gail Lamori. I'm from Denver, Colorado, and I'm the aunt of Devon Duchaney. And I've just been listening on and catching up with a lot of things that is being said and brought up. You know, I'm sure you guys all heard of Devon Duchaney, which he disappeared in the care of Sherbrooke Police Department. And sadly, he was found 2 weeks later with handcuffs still to his back. To this day, we've been trying to find answers, trying to talk with anybody. Everybody's been ignoring us because it's within, you know, how he left us is within the police department. And, you know, 5 years has passed. We've been just shut up with silence. We haven't received anything from them saying how sorry they are. Is there anything else they can do for us? What can we do? What can we provide? Nothing. There is no connection, no communication. You know, grief is brutal. Sherbrooke Police Department has lacked practical strategies and always has lacked them for families that's coping with immediate and longer term impacts. Like I said, unfortunately, in the past 5 years, the police department has done less and less. We never got a statement or any kind of facts. The sad part was that my nephew was detained by Sherbrooke Police Department, October 25th, 2021. We never got the clear indication of what had transpired that day. If my nephew was highly intoxicated, if he needed medical attention, the next protocol would have been, or should have been taken for him being taken to the hospital and let the medical team take care of him. Nothing was done. According to witnesses, he was already covered in blood in the middle of the street. Instead, he was taken to the substation. From there, we encountered our nightmare. He was found 2 weeks later in a canal, still handcuffed to his back. This haunts us every day. Was he screaming for his dad? What was his last words? To us, my nephew was thrown away like trash, like his life didn't matter. To this day, we're still seeking answers, but everything has been shut down on us. Nothing but silence. You could hear a pin drop. I don't understand, how could anybody live with themselves knowing that this happened in their care? It seems like everything is dismissed and avoided accountability. This happened during the last administration. The chief of police resigned the time when this happened. And it's just been, we are physically, emotionally, and mentally drained. We're still searching for answers. We just want that accountability and for the police department to tell us what exactly had happened, what transpired that night. Instead, they're treating us with silence. Silence is guilt. We've been ignored, like I said, and it's negligence by the justice system. And to this day, nobody wants to listen to us. I am so glad that you guys have opened this task force. I'm so glad that, with people being disappeared every day, they have resources that you guys are trying to put in place. When my nephew disappeared in 2021, there was nothing. My brother, 6 months later, he finally brought his son home. He buried his son 1,000 feet away from his house, and that's his comfort. Our community in our own neighborhood, Rock Point, Arizona, are relatives. They don't come to him and say, hey, what do you need? We're here for you. He drives 8 hours to Denver to get his comfort from us. I just recently went home for Shabbat Fair, and I saw so many people there. I was glad that I could go home and be amongst my people. But when I saw my brother walking in the parade, that broke me. He said he's going to do it until he gets justice for his son. Sometimes I tell him, brother, I don't think we're going to get justice. I don't think nobody cares. I don't think nobody listens. And he says, sister, I'm going to keep on doing it until my last breath. My nephew was a good kid. That day, something happened. He was a poet. He did his music, and he was going to be a dad. He has only one son, which that little boy came into this world after 2 months when he left this world, my nephew. He had dreams. He wasn't just a nobody. He was a human being that was loved by so many. I just want to share his story, and I just want my brother to have some kind of peace, some kind of justice, because the only people that know what happened that night is Chibra Police Department at that substation. And it's too painful. Is his case still open? That's my question. Or is it back in the back? Or is it just going to be forgotten? But no, within our hearts, as his family, we will never, never forget him. He will forever be with us. And I just want to share one quote from Pope Francis. We are all equal, all of us. But this truth is not recognized. This equality is not recognized. And for this reason, some people are, we can say, happier than others. But this is not a right. We all have the same rights. When we do not see this, society is unjust. It does not follow the rule of justice. And where there is no justice, there cannot be peace. I would like to repeat this with you. There is no justice. There is no peace. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Yeah, Gail, we appreciate you providing that testimony to the task force. I wanted to make sure, do you have an advocate that's helping the family, or is that something we need to connect you to those resources?
Yes, most definitely. You know, my brother is struggling with a lot.
Yes.
And I want him to have somebody advocating for him, somebody. The only person that he's really connected with is Mazi Ganetso and Vanji. Those two people are the only two people that he's really connected with.
Okay. We'll continue to work with Vanji and how we can provide support. I did write down questions that the family is asking. We can do a follow-up and see the status of the case and see who was assigned and how, just what was the process. And Vanji, if you want to, we could jump on a call and you can give us where we're at, what information has been provided, and what information the family is still requesting. We could coordinate that. We could do that on a Tuesday call, or if you want to set up a call with Dr. and I and the other advocates, we can certainly do that.
I will do that.
Yes, we can go ahead and set up a call with Tatiana and everybody else, so that way we are all on the same page. That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate you so much. Thank you. Okay, we'll just take a minute to regroup. I think we dealt with a lot of heavy issues, also training and knowing where we're at, what type of support our community needs. So, Chicha, can you end us with a prayer just to kind of reconnect all of us? So we're going to end with a prayer just to reground ourselves, just to make sure we're in a good way moving forward. But we also know that, and I agree, when there's no justice, there's no peace. So if we could forward with that prayer. Thank you.
Touch them in a supernatural way. On the day of nothing, on the day in it, that you Yod a name, take it in the name, child in the name. Give us the strength, the comfort, the peace. Touch us, each and every one of us, our hearts, our souls, our body, our minds, and our spirits. That moving forward as a community, as task force, as family, friends, relatives, that we find the answers that we are seeking. Touch our loved ones who need it. Be with them. Be with them today and every day. Help us, Father, to find what we're looking for. We pray for our leaders who are standing strong. I pray for the leaders that are standing strong to lead us and to guide us and to help us when and where we need it. Thank you that we have that shoulder to lean on. Thank you that we have each other. Thank you, Father, for bringing us together today. I ask this in your son's name, Jesus Christ, amen.
Okay. So appreciate the prayer, and as we end, the next time we'll convene here will be October 23rd. But our deliverables to you is the report, and there are other action groups like the violence prevention that you may be interested in participating in. There's also the substance abuse prevention group. I do want to recognize we have Vice Chair Jermaine Simonson on the line, and what was the fourth one?
Suicide.
And suicide prevention group. So Vice Chair Simonson, did you want to say anything in closing before we end the meeting? Okay.
She might be driving en route
Right.
to Cheers.
And then I do see that Anita King has joined us. Anita, Shaban, did you want to, you have the floor.
Okay, Yate Pinano, so hope you guys all understand Navajo. Okay, Yate, my daughter, behalf of my daughter Pepita Madeline Redhair, I'm still fighting for answers, which is she was missing from Albuquerque.
Mhm.
And I'm still fighting for answers, and they're still doing the investigation and all that. We're working with we have a private detective. And so to join again, they're really working good on it. We don't have an attorney as well. And also I wanted to say that I've been looking at that Navajo missing and murdered, whatever. Her name is not on, her picture is not on the Navajo Nation. That I was told before that she was missing from Albuquerque. And I thought it didn't matter, so that's my only question that I have. And also I didn't really know there was funding service for MMIW. And Facebook, and I was really, really surprised. And I didn't know that I needed help with the reward. Vanjie just announced that. I even know that I didn't know that either, that they have money for reward. If my reward has been increased for her, we might find some solution, some answers for her. It is hard, like I deal with this depression, anxiety every day, but nobody understands. We do the ground search, our family, ourselves, and it's hard, but seeing all this on Facebook, it is sad. It is sad. We're not being just used. And I don't know, it's just, like I said, I deal with this everyday sadness. And the only person that I really talk to is one of the lady from Utah. Her name is Mary Martina Maryboy. Yeah, so other than that, I don't, this so that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Shema, for joining us. And this is always a safe space for you to, if you want to join on the Zoom call. And we also provide it online if you're not available. Mary is part of the community-based victim advocates that Navajo Nation funds. And so I'm glad you have that connection. Vanjie is always a great resource when it comes to surviving families. And we do want to have and host more of these healing circles. And so maybe that's something that we could come together and say, what is an activity that we could bring people together and be part of healing, whether it's craft, whether it's making something, whether it's trying to make additional signs if it's advocacy. And earlier we talked about this more comprehensive missing missing persons flyer, and that is our goal, is to include all of our relatives who were reported missing that are not part of, within Navajo Nation jurisdiction, because that's what the missing murdered unit for PD, their flyers just focused on their cases. And so we want to expand that. So we had a conversation how we can do that. Maybe the first is just a digital, and then we see how we could provide, because we do want to make sure our goal also is to do more radio education. That's been requested by the detectives. And also, there was an attempt to do more billboards, but it does require funding, and that's why I wanted to expand more services out there. So if there's other ways that you feel that we could continue to support, we're here. We also meet every Tuesday on these action items to get things done, but we want to make more of a healing space too. And so if you have any recommendations, and we're open to get guidance from you.
Delegate Crotty, can I say something about all of that?
Absolutely.
So every Tuesday with the Missing and Murdered Diné Relatives Coalition, we have been meeting virtually Tuesday evenings from 6 to 7 p.m. via Zoom. And that is more of a planning, like for the parades, any upcoming events, to where we are able to support families. That the link is on our website, on our Facebook page, and I believe our Instagram page. And then on Sundays, Zanaba and I have started the self-care Sundays. It's both virtual and in person. We've had two so far. One, and both were from my home in Kirtland. And I didn't have any families come the first time. The second time, I did have family of Colleen Kyle Jackson come, and we, of course, prepared a meal, and I had prepared a meal for the families, and then we did the little diamond beads, or a little craft. And so I was talking to Zenaba the other day, and I would like to, instead of just, hosting it in my community, I would like to go to other communities, with these craft items, so that, the more families can come together. So those services are provided. We're just, just trying to get out there. There hasn't been, like I said, much response in my community as there was before, prior. But that is, in the works right now. We will be in Alamo on Saturday for the Alamo Indian Day parade. And I did, share it on my social media pages that, I'm, extending the invitation to families to walk with us and join in unity. And I haven't had anything planned for this Sunday, But like I said, we do have the option of virtual meetings on Sunday as well for Self-Care Sunday.
Okay, appreciate that. And it just definitely provides, a little glimmer of hope and healing. So appreciate that your team is continuing with those services. We'll follow up with Sunshine in terms of what and how we want to move forward with these healing circles that was recommended at the Dine Action Plan. I know when we have our meetings, they'll usually have like a cultural day the next day. We've also had that conversation, with our task force for New Mexico. And we are, maybe Vanjie, what we could do at the next meeting is have the flyer that the New Mexico Missing Persons Task Force is sponsoring for the holidays is to contact with the families and with the children of a missing relative, how the task force wants to support them again this year in like fundraising and hopefully delivering some presents and other things to the children who are their parents or guardians are missing.
Yes, and that would be great, and I honestly don't mind going into, other communities to host little events for our children, during the holiday season as well. And with that being said, I know that you're in the middle of your budget and finances right now, but I don't know if you can include, our coalition on that so that we can get funding from the Navajo Nation as well.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely work on that and with your board and what that looks like and that request. So that's always an open invitation. And I do have a community nonprofit called the Navajo Quilting Project. And so if you want to get into quilting, or we're gonna, look at maybe just showing or demonstrating how to make ribbon skirts. We have some of our team there like developing kits. So it could be a way for you when you're out there in the community, just another way to be connected and just feel like there's community out there for our families. Okay. Dati.
Shada, I do have a request. I would like to ask the task force how they would feel about removing certain members off our task force list. Because we have an extensive list of members who are not coming to our meetings, both Tuesdays and Thursdays. And some of these individuals have completely dropped off on the conversation. And we do have members on here who are actively with the task force every meeting. They're working boots on the ground. We have families here who like to get involved. How can we move forward on removing some of these people off the task force list and adding in new members? Because we do have family members who want to be part of this conversation. I think we need to have more families on this list as well, so we can hear directly from them. So we're not always like taking information from a third party or the victims advocates. So that's just something I would like to ask the task force how they feel about that.
Okay, so looking at the list and with the new fiscal year and the upcoming change of seasons, it looks like we're going to have 3 community representative positions open. And so I'll write a memo to the former community representatives, thanking them for their time and interest, and just letting them know we're going to update who wants to be on the as a community representative. So all it simply takes is if you want to be a community representative on the task force is a letter of interest, and you can send that to Tatiana or Lorraine Spencer. We review the letters of interest, and at our next meeting we could just invite them, or if you're probably already on the call, and maybe just introduce yourself, and then we'll just concur and accept the new community representatives. When it comes to the Navajo Nation programs, they're identified per the Navajo Nation Nabagiakit resolution. And so we could ask these different entities to then
update on who's gonna represent them at these meetings. And so we will have to follow up with, I see Judicial Branch needs to update, Navajo Nation Police Department needs an update, Chief Public Defender's Office needs an update, Department of Criminal Investigation needs an update, and Shichat, which we could just get an update in terms of a letter if you're also can be joining us. And I know it just depends, we did get a letter identifying Miss Denise Billy, but you can keep Miss Denise Billy and add your name. It's a very informal discussion, but by resolution, these different Navajo Nation programs should have a representative on the task force.
Okay, got it.
And we'll make sure too with the different committees, if they still want to move forward or if other committee members would want to officially join the task force. And you're here, Tatiana, I'm here. Okay, so we'll move forward on our 23rd call. Have that ready. Oh wait, the 23rd is during council. Well, I think we could still have it.
I think we're gonna end by
Yeah.
Wednesday for sure.
Okay.
I also have one more suggestion. We keep coming back to this conversation of educating chapter houses, educating community members. Would it be possible, and I don't know how the task force would feel about this, if we go to agency council meetings and ask to be put on the agenda to give informal presentations, just to introduce ourselves, to let them know that we are here and we are helping families, and if chapter houses need more assistance, guidance, training when it comes to missing persons cases, they can come directly to us, and then we can get them to the proper entities who can give them that information. Because I do understand that with what happened in Red Rock, there was a lot of confusion in communications on who is the spokesperson for the family, who is to talk with police, and especially when it comes to news outlet, that was one of the big things for me that I saw. So if it's possible, if the task force was comfortable about this, going to agency council meetings and really educating our chapter house leadership, because we get them all there in one setting location. So I think that would be a really good idea to do.
Yeah,
Because right now we do have a informative kind of like flyer on speakers reports when we do give that to agency councils, but I just don't know how much the chapter leaderships are actually looking into it.
Okay, maybe we could start off with a table, like think of a table with information and then and see if we could get on it. I know at Northern, Four Corners K-9 Search and Rescue provided a report and it was really good. And so maybe that could be how we move forward with the other agencies to have that conversation. And I was hoping to eventually do some virtual training. So it's also like when individuals have the capacity to hear it, because it also could be very intense.
Yeah.
And that's why we always want to make sure that we're invited and then we create a trauma-informed process when providing the reports. Righty, I know we went over time today, but there was a lot of great information with Renee's training, hearing from the families and advocates on how we can move forward, and just really making sure that the team there at Navajo Technical University will be prepared to give their update to the task force and community members on the next steps they're going to move forward in, because they're going to be hiring staff. And I think that would be a great way for us to, what does data collection look like? How are they going to, get training, because they'll be communicating with family members, how advocates will be involved in the process. So that will be helpful for the future. Okay, is there any other, what's that number one? Is that a chat or no?
That's just for the chat. Yeah.
Okay, so we're good?
We're good.
All right, so we're gonna start winding down the call. I'm gonna call this meeting to a close at 10:52. Everybody take care of yourself, be well, and we will gather on the 23rd. I'm going now.
Thank you again, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, Renee.
Hopefully.
Thank you, Renee. Have a good day, everyone.